Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This podcast has been brought to you by Discovering the Truth. My name is Donnie Winger, and I'm joined by my group mates
Cole Bierman,
Jason Bernstein,
and Haley Jordan.
We all attend Highland Park High School in Highland Park, Illinois. We take a class called Immigrant Voices. It's a class with a great diversity of people that allows us as students to talk about controversial topics, specifically race relations, without having to be judged by our opinions or thoughts. In our Immigrant Voices English class, we have been working on a semester-long project regarding the ongoing issue with self-segregation and racism within schools across America, and also right here in our community at Highland Park High School, specifically about Latinx and African American students. We will explain to you about how we came to the conclusion that there is an issue regarding self-segregation and racism in schools, along with how we made an action plan to try and help shed light on the issue. Throughout our history, efforts have been made to balance the inequality of race within the school system. The first real event that turned the tide was the 1954-1955 rulings of the Brown versus Board of Education mandating schools to integrate black and white students. However, physical integration hasn't proven to make substantial change in the hearts of students higher in the social pyramid. Many students, particularly white, still look down upon minority students of color, and it's visible. There's many reasons as to why change has been very difficult. Zoning of specific neighborhoods to feed kids into specific schools has been an issue that has failed to be talked about, and we feel as if it's one of the major causes as to why this segregation happens in schools. The beginning of what takes place in schools regarding separation and segregation of races starts with how the kids are placed together and with whom.
A study done by UCLA has shown that to be an average Latino student in California today means that you likely attend a school that is 84% non-white and with high rates of concentrated poverty.
Here it really emphasizes the non-white community. It says 84%. I feel like that's a lot. I mean, even our school, what did we say it was?
74%.
74% white, non-white.
That's a lot.
Yeah, 74. That's a lot. So I feel like that definitely emphasizes the just kind of like the strong presence that the white community has there, and that I don't know if that takes a role for sure. I mean,
It just is a great emphasis on the physical layout of, for example, in California, how their public schools are being managed with, it's easy to see that Latino students are clearly being placed together in their neighborhoods with only other Latino students, and then that leaves the white community all living together, being able to have some better resources to education, leaving the Latino population kind of struggling for resources and getting that education that they deserve.
In a more local sense, we have Highland Park and Highwood, which are basically back to back, and for Highwood, it's mainly a Latino community. That's just how it is separated. And Highland Park would be more of like the white students that with a lot of money, like they have much more expensive housing, and Highwood is just like small apartment buildings, and it's a lot less expensive.
And fewer single-family homes
Yes.
than compared to Highland Park.
And with like the diversity of that, like it's kind of like cut off at a point that you can like tell, and it's kind of how it is in our school too, where the white students stay over there and then the Latinos stay on the other side kind of thing. And I feel like if we don't do something like putting Highland Park and Highwood together and like, I don't know, making a rec center or something for students to go, we would feel a lot more comfortable with each other, and we wouldn't have to be so segregated in schools.
I feel like I think it's very interesting that we have one town and another town next to each other, and they're just completely different.
Mm-hmm.
That just blows my mind. I
Yeah,
don't know.
the culture is very, very
Yeah.
different. And regarding the district schools, so District 1112, so our elementary schools and middle schools, there is a dual language program for those schools, but the kids that are from Highwood or Highwood especially are part of those dual language programs. So you don't see a lot of.
I feel like actually anybody. I think anybody who ever wants to be in it can be in it. Actually,
Yeah.
anybody from Highland Park is allowed to be in it. So I've had it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Red
There's,
Oak.
yeah, people they do Red Oak especially, but yeah. So the program, it's primarily Spanish speaking, and
This essentially sort of just like segregates the students from one side to another, because the dual language students tend to just like be in their own classes and running through their own schedule, like away from the rest of the students in the District 112's schedule. So it's different.
but it's like kind of like a hard surface because
Yeah.
the Spanish speaking students, I feel like they kind of need this,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there's still like that block that's separating the non-dual
So-
language students from the dual language.
But would you
students.
say, for example, Oak Terrace, where I went to elementary school, was it had a decent amount of dual language programs going on? Would you say a majority of those students that take place in the programs are from Highwood? So leaving those other, say for example, other white students from Highland Park, they don't really get that exposure to those programs, just mainly because their schools might not offer it.
They don't see it during the day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could go lead all the way up into what we see in our high school today.
Yeah, I mean, you even notice it throughout, like a child's a person who's in dual language. I mean, they go from their designated school to Northwood. I feel like doesn't that have doesn't have
Northwood is
North
the-
as a big dual language program. I feel like that's what most of those students get the option to go into their school. Like I had a few friends who go to Northwood instead of Place, because that's where the program let them go. And also, it has to do with being comfortable. I mean, they've been in these classes for 6 years and they want to continue that and be with their friends. I mean, yeah.
So we did there was a video in our class that was on the Tucson school in, was it Arizona?
Yeah.
In Arizona, and they basically had a class that talked about the culture of the Mexican culture, and there's a lot of different students from different races. It wasn't just Latinos, and I feel like if our schools had different programs for like the languages and stuff, and they, like, white students and other students of color too wanted to like be a part of it, that would be like a way for the students could all connect, and we wouldn't be separated in schools or feel like we don't belong somewhere because we don't speak that language or something.
And they obviously got a lot of scrutiny for this program because people felt as if they were implementing some
contradicting,
like
you-
bad
Going against,
views,
like, they weren't
bad
talking
views.
about the American
Yeah.
culture, they were talking about
Exactly.
something
They were
else.
talking about, not the American culture. But I think it's important for a program like that to possibly exist, to give everyone maybe a sense of information, a sense of understanding for some people who might not get that exposure on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
So now we want to bring on a guest who's been...
who has personal experience with the dual language programs and how they've just interacted with it over the years.
Okay, so my name is Daniela Castro, and I am a senior here in Highland Park High School.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks for joining us.
Do you think our school is segregated?
Yes.
In what ways?
I mean, well, it's like separation, right? So it's mostly shown in the comments and sometimes in the classroom, but it's not, but it's like more self-segregated, you know? Like we all just go to our own ways to where we're more comfortable. It's not like somebody's telling us, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna sit there.
Why do you think it happens just naturally like that?
Because it's always been like that. We're always sitting where we're comfortable with. We're sitting with the people that are like us in a way.
Do you find yourself ever hanging out with or surrounding yourself with people of other races?
Yes, I do hang out with people of different races.
Where do you see these places that are segregated in the school? Where do you experience
A major part is the commons.
Commons, yeah.
Like the cafeteria sometimes, I guess. Yeah,
Mhm.
those are like the major ones.
Within a classroom, do you ever feel uncomfortable being maybe the only person of color?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just weird because so like me being the shy person and sometimes hard to be comfortable in some places. It's hard to not see someone that it's like you or the same race to be comfortable with. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I mean, for me, I'm white, I don't really, always have a same kind of maybe feelings of being, it's like second class, I guess, in like a school. So what do your teachers, your teachers try and help you out in any way? Do they like recognize the problem and assist you in any way?
I don't think so. Yeah.
I mean, do you ever reach out to them?
Not really.
No?
Yeah.
Do you feel like in classrooms, teachers tend to favor students that are not of color?
Maybe. Like, I might not see it because, I possibly don't really care if they favor people. But there are teachers, I think, that do favor people of specific groups. Yeah.
And besides the classroom, and I see you're wearing a Rotary sweatshirt, do you, are you part of any maybe clubs or organizations that you might see this type of maybe segregation just not in a classroom setting, maybe like sports or?
I'm not really in any clubs currently, but I have heard from other, friends of mine, not specifically race-wise, but like grade in school. Like in soccer, most of the girls are just in the team because they're either seniors or they were in the varsity last year, not because of their skills, and that takes away other people's chances to be in the team.
Even though they probably could be getting a spot on that team, you would say?
Yeah.
For sure.
What are some things that you think that the school could change that would avoid having segregation and diversity in our school?
To help break those barriers. Like not having, because I feel like it's hard for someone of like a different race to just go there and break that barrier. Like we need a lot of support.
Yeah, we're struggling with this question too. It's a really tough answer. We came up with the best solution is just time. Like it takes time for people to come together. But do you have any input on that?
No, I agree with the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just the people too.
Do you feel as if our school overall though provides the support necessary and for anyone like for yourself, for your friends, and do they reach out and use the resources that Highland Park provides for them?
I feel like we do have those resources, but they're not put out there as much as they're supposed to. So that's why it's not like
So
we use them that much.
more as if they kind of just don't know what's there.
Yeah.
Would you say?
It's to be more informed and have more students like know about these resources, because if they don't know, we can't really use them.
When you came to Highland Park High School, did you have any resources?
Not really.
So both Highwood and Highland Park feed into Highland Park, and so the neighborhoods are sort of like segregated itself. Like the lower economic statuses are usually bunched together, while the higher like bunched together. Do you think that plays a role in just like getting to know like your friends before you step into high school?
Can you repeat the question? 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So like before high school, like you have a friend group usually from middle school.
Yeah.
And so if you're like, I don't know how to word it.
Basically, does like the segregation of people lower class and higher class, does that play a role before you go to high school? Do you think that's a problem?
I mean, I don't think so, just because we're kids and we don't really think of that. But I feel like as we grow older, we see it. So maybe that kind of plays more like forwards.
Or do you think it plays a role, but we don't, or subconsciously to us, but then once we get to an age where we can like recognize it, do you think that's the results of, you know, associating or having certain groups living in a certain area, what is it?
You sort of just get to know people who are like familiar or like similar to like your own like environment at home, because like usually you just like hang around like kids who have like the same like environment, so it's like hard to like just like meet new people and like become like less segregated. I don't know.
Yeah, I have friends that live both in Highwood and Highland Park,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's more closer to the people that live close to you, just
Yeah.
because you can connect to them.
Yeah.
And it's much different to when somebody's living somewhere else.
When did you start realizing in Highland Park High School that there was a problem with segregation?
When I first walk into the Commons. That's literally like the first thing I saw. I'm like, why is there more people of this kind than others?
Yeah, and that's like one thing, and can't speak for everyone right here, but when I first got here, that was definitely like the first thing, not just I saw, but what I heard about as well. I heard.
I mean, they also name the halls by the people that sit there. So it's.
I mean, like right when I first got here, I heard that. I mean, Commons is pretty much for only upper class who just tend to be white students, not really people of color in any way, shape, or form. So I thought that was really interesting, right? Like right off the bat, coming to Highland Park.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I moved here, because my dad's in the military. I first came, like, I would walk by the Commons and not really know what it is. I mean, I just thought it was like another tiny cafeteria, basically. But when I would walk past it, I would feel slightly uncomfortable, because I could tell that people were like staring at me, like, you know, why are you like around here? Or even if I just walk in there, I would like leave because I would feel like, you know, I don't belong there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and it's been 4 years of being here, and I still feel uncomfortable going into the Commons, even though I'm just going to the bookstore to get a book.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, say you walked and wanted to sit in the Commons for lunch on any given day, what do you think would happen? Like, how would they react, do you think?
I feel like a part of me, because of the fear, like, I might be stared at. Just like, kind of what you were saying, like, what are you doing here? Like, I don't think you belong here. there's still a part of me that says, they might not even care. So it's all sometimes in our heads, like, oh, they're only sitting there, but if I go in there, they're just gonna, like, I don't know how to say it, not accept me there. So, yeah.
And apparently after the school year, the wall, and correct me if I'm wrong, the wall between, or that separates
The bookstore and
the bookstore and the cafeteria.
They're doing construction with something.
Yeah.
And it's gonna create just like one big cafeteria for all the students, so they're gonna just like destroy the commons. So do you think that that's just like a nudge for integration, and like how do you think that'll affect like the students like just getting to know each other better?
I think I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because
That's a tough question.
I feel like it's still going to be the same. Like, the wall's not going to be there, but it's still going to be a wall.
You're just gonna see.
Yeah.
So, Cole, you're someone who sits in the commons, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's hard to just like talk about it, but I sit in there because my friends sit in there. It's not I choose to like segregate myself from like the rest of the school.
Oh yeah, we're not calling.
Yeah,
you
no,
that,
I know. I don't know. It's just I do realize like the effects of just like there's just like a bubble surrounded the commons too. Like it's just like it's hard to explain. I guess students don't really realize like the underlying like effects that it has on society when they just like segregate themselves from like thinking they're like better or something.
Yeah, and I don't always think it's they're intentionally trying to like separate themselves, because I feel like if a person of color wanted to go and interact with them, I don't think they would be like, get out of here, I don't want to talk to you, but I think it's really hard with that and just initial encounterment with them. There's a fear that they're not gonna want to interact in any way, which I think is a problem, because I think the first step of just trying to creating some better race relations, specifically just for Highland Park, would just be just that first encounterment, just hearing a voice that's not it's not someone of their own, not someone that they don't feel comfortable with, which I think is important
They're not
to hear.
familiar with.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And Danielle, if you don't mind me asking, does yourself or any of your friends, do they ever use the drop-in center at all for support?
Yeah,
Yes.
that I know of, yeah. There's a lot of people in there that go there for support, and it's really nice and comfortable to sit in there.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact statistics, but the majority of the students who use the drop-in center for support are mainly people of color.
What Donnie's trying to say is the fact that people of color are using the drop-in more than people who are not kind of creates a problem that there's something going on, that they have to go almost. I've seen some people that I know, they go there almost on a daily, and I don't know if it could be something at home, it could be themselves, and I feel like a lot of it does have to do with the school and the students maybe. So
Well, it's more, I feel like, once someone goes into the drop-in and they feel comfortable in there, of course they're going to tell other people, like, you should go to the drop-in, like, it's nice in there. So that maybe creates, like, a safe barrier for them, too.
And it's obviously a great resource that Highland Park has to offer for students. But it definitely highlights the issue that we have, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of sets, like, that boundary. I mean, the people who are needing that support are your non-white students for the most part, and then it's not okay. So I think we have to do a better job of pushing that first time interaction with people who you're not really comfortable with. Try to hear other people's voice and try to get a better understanding for them. So where did you go to, or maybe go through like your school like history, like where did you, like elementary school and then middle school, like where did you go?
Attend?
Elementary school I went to Red Oak, and then middle school I went to Northwood, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you in the dual language program at
Yeah.
Red Oak?
Yes.
Do you feel like that there was like an unintentional segregation between the kids in the dual language program and the kids in the non-dual language program? Do you feel like you're interacting with them on a day-to-day basis?
No. It was more, I was interactive more towards the people that were in the dual language
Mm-hmm.
program, just because I was more like connected to them.
Similarities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So did you would your classes ever combine and do something together, or is it just strictly by yourself?
Well, we did, in 5th grade, we did this thing where kind of preparing us for middle school, and they had different classes. One was, math and science and English, and we were all separated. So the dual language class with the non-dual language, we were like kind of squished together in different places.
Mm-hmm.
So it was different, but it
Mhm.
was still nice.
Do you think by doing that it was definitely beneficial? Like, would you rather had them like keep you guys separated and like guess like I don't know and keep like you were talking about how it was a little uncomfortable to be in the white crowd per se, but do you feel like it was beneficial to combine with the other group?
In a way, yes.
Mhm.
Just to know that even though we're different, we could still interact with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it made it a bit more comfortable.
Oh, that's good.
And Haley actually just pulled up some some stats breaking down class at Highland Park.
So, for our school, there are 2,026 students that go here. There are 529 ninth graders, 471 10th graders, 510 11th graders, and 516 12th graders. And when you look at the statistics, for the race, there's 2% black, 2% Asian, 2.2% American Indian, 0.1% Hawaiian Native, 22% Hispanic, 71% white, and then it says 2 other races, but I don't know what that is. So if you look at it, there's definitely a high percentage of whites going here, and seeing how little there is between blacks, Asians, and Hispanics, it's like you can tell it's almost like people don't seem to be welcomed here that are colored.
Right.
A little bit more on Hispanic because Highwood has this high majority of them are, and in Highland Park. But when you look at it, it's like whites that have they have a lot of money and those big houses and a lot of money. They go to this school, and it's almost like they're the only ones that feel like they should go here, kind of thing.
Right. I'm actually really surprised that there's only 22% of Hispanic in the school.
I
thought
would
there
think
was-
there was more.
I thought there was
Yeah,
more.
I was like, that
Definitely.
doesn't seem right, but okay.
That's a little surprising.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering our questions today.
Thanks,
welcome.
Danielle.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Daniela.
We appreciate you coming on and just sharing your thoughts with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we would like to bring on a guest from our high school, a teacher. His name is Mr. Garza, who is Latino himself and has been here around 13 years. So we think he would provide some really good analysis of the segregation that he might visibly see on any given day.
Wait, what if I have? Yeah. Why do schools, not just HBHS, but around the country, still seem to be segregated even after many strides of equality?
It's a big question. We may actually get to some of that in class today. I think what we're looking at, like there's a subject in history known as the longue durée, right? When you look at it from a historian's point of view, the time in which, for our country specifically, with notions of equality of opportunity, in the larger historical time frame, it's only been a short amount of time that people have been acculturated to that philosophy, and that really gets down to the birth of the Second American Republic, 1865, and the end of the Civil War, and you had a broad-based notion of freedom that was very short-lived. The doorway to full freedom and equality closes down in 1877 with the return of legalized Jim Crow segregation, and doesn't open up again until 1963, and then you have the sequence of civil rights laws thereafter. So it's really a short time, basically, from the early 60s till now, that the broader American public has been acculturated into the system of equality of opportunity. So from that perspective, taking the longer view of history, we're still developing our sense of what full equality, freedom, and liberty mean, right? And from that perspective, the evolution of those three constructs, equality, freedom, liberty, and you could put justice in there too, because there can't be any equality without justice, then the pathway to that evolution is going to be jagged at times. There's going to be times in which, doorways of equality and freedom open up, and times when they shut down a little bit. And so there's, from a much more sort of humanistic, historical viewpoint, we're still working those concepts out. Hopefully we'll get to a deeper, richer understanding of that as we progress, but there's not a straight and narrow path to figuring that out.
What are some ways to integrate communities / schools?
I think any form of integration, and I want to choose my words carefully, there has to be, if history's taught us nothing in this regard, it's the reality of, when you're talking about assimilation, in some respects there has to be a nudge to it. The powers that be have to nudge people to come together. That's not something that I think we do naturally as humans, right? Where we tend to, from a psychological perspective, group up with similar people, and so as communities form, and we think about our own community here in the Highland Park Highwood community, there's like 4 or 5 different communities in one larger space, right? And so how do we effectively get, and each of those communities can be seemingly on their own island, how do we get them to work together, to come together, forming a quilt, right? And so that, I think, is, like, when you speak of social justice or equity work, that's the work. It's how do we help people, nudge people to see common interests, right? And when those interests, when people are actively working towards achieving a common goal, then I think you start merging people towards a greater sense of we. But ultimately there has to be some sort of a goal here. I think, from a practical point of view, team sports is a place to start with that, and that can branch out into larger circles.
What are some of the problems that you see in HBHS that are conflicting with races?
I mean, there's a lot of fracture or fissure, but I think it again, in the larger historical picture, that stems from a lot of divisions in society where, I think a lot of those ways of seeing, or perhaps even the othering of human beings, happens when, we're growing up, and as we mature and become more aware through our education and through our experience, the hope is that the mind opens up to a broader understanding. And so when I look at it from my perspective as a teacher, the best I can do is plant seeds for a greater tomorrow. Now, the hope always is that, the work and the what I am showing the student will impact the student in such a way that some change can happen now. But I think what I see in this school, I experienced as a student myself. And so there is that sort of, again, going back to that longue durée, these problems exist and have existed for a long time. So, going back to that essence of being active in trying to break down those barriers and help students see common bonds with each other, that's ultimately the work.
All right.
Do you mind just talking about what those maybe problems that you see and how they connect to the problems you faced back in high school, like what they are exactly?
Yeah, again, I want to choose my words carefully because I don't want to offend, but I think there's a certain sense of zero-sumness that I see in this school that I certainly experienced as a student. That, to speak in more generalizations or broad-based equations, I think there are groups that will say, for me and my group to succeed, somebody else has got to lose, another group has to lose. And I experienced that growing up. And so from a practical point of view, it could play out in such a simple way as perhaps communities of parents saying, my kids are well prepared for high school and we want to get them to a certain collegiate space, and other kids from other groups are underprepared, and so as a parent, I don't want the underprepared hindering the potential success of my own kid within my own parental friend groups. And so that's what I mean, where some of this starts very small, and sometimes students are unaware that they're a product of that. Those are very difficult things to confront. That's what I see as the fundamental division, right? The issue with that kind of thinking is that it creates a framework in the mind of certain students are operating from a deficit while other students are operating from an evolved space. And that right there reduces the potential for commonality, And so part of the way I try to break through that in my classrooms is to sort of nudge people to group together and to work together, until we see sort of all the things that we have in common. I think those divisions are going to remain. And, the broader, deeper understanding is, just speaking for myself as somebody with 2 advanced degrees and 1 bachelor degree, the more you're in that world of academics, you realize how much you really don't know. And so the pursuit of education is constant throughout your life. And you're never in this space, at least for me, I never feel like I know everything or that I can stop learning or that I'm actually trying to always learn from other people, because I feel like every time I'm in a space of getting more education, I realize how much more there's left to learn and how much I really don't know, you see? And so I didn't always operate from that space. I know when I was your guys' age, I thought in us and them logics all the time, I've had to evolve into this position. And so I with respect, I treat each student with an understanding like they're on a certain journey and a certain path, right? I think our job as teachers is to sort of help you all find a common ground. But it's a lifetime process. It's not something that I think can be torn down, those divisions that you all see and experience, that it can be torn down like that. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So. Does that help?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Going off of what we heard from both Daniela and Mr. Garza and our other sources, we've come to realize that it's hard to say this, but there really is no solution. I mean, the best thing we could do is just let
Time take care of itself.
Let time take care of itself and let people just
interact with one another, because it's hard to nudge and force human interactions without two opposing sides wanting to interact.
And as Mr. Garza was saying, it was really interesting to hear about, when he put time into perspective for us. It's really only been around 50 years since the civil rights era. So in the grand scheme of our history, it's been a very, very short amount of time since that ended. So obviously more time is going to be needed for race relations to get better, but it's important to keep nudging these different races together, because if we're all separated, this issue is never going to get resolved.
In conclusion, we want to start off by thanking Ms. Lucchese for running this class and teaching us all the viewpoints and different perspectives that we've learned over the course of the year.
And we also want to thank our guests for coming on and sharing their thoughts with us, as it provided us with some really good information, some really good talking points. And
we also want to thank you guys. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you.